Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of the Callum Sully podcast. This is episode 46 and I'm joined by my guest today, Alison Bladh. Alison is, I've sort of touched about this on the introduction, we're going to be talking a lot about the nutrition. Alison has had a lot of experience within the topics we're going to talk about. Okay, she's a registered nutritional therapist, and I always get this bit wrong, Alison. Is it esthetician?
No, I know it's not an easy word. It's esthetician.
Esthetician, yeah, esthetician.
Which we as well.
Yeah, so obviously that means a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about is going to be tied in with that sort of healthcare, beauty care, and nutrition, the benefits of nutrition on that. So, Alison, how are you? You are over in Sweden right now, right? I always start by asking my guests what the weather's like, and the reason why is because usually when I record these episodes, mine is terrible.
Yeah, no, it's lovely to be here, Callum. Thank you for having me on your podcast. But yes, I live just outside Stockholm, and I can say at the moment the weather is absolutely beautiful. We've been blessed with a fantastic summer here, so no, everything's great, very sunny. I am actually British, as you probably can tell, but I'm living in Sweden at the moment, and it's a wonderful country to live in. It really is. I'm very spoiled living here.
Whereabouts in the UK?
I was actually born in Surrey, in Guildford.
Oh. Okay. I'm just south of Manchester, in Buxton. Technically Derbyshire, but we're just Manchester. More people relate to that. So yeah, Alison, tell me a little bit about sort of how you got to where you are now. Like, where did this? I know your profession, your experience started in that sort of healthcare, skincare, and then it's kind of now ventured into, obviously use a lot of that nutrition side, and now predominantly we're kind of focused on the nutrition side. So just tell me a little bit about how that journey really.
Yeah, I mean, my journey started when I was a teenager, because I actually had very bad skin. I had, the typical teenage acne. And, as we all know, it's tough being a teenager, isn't it? And then when you suddenly develop, acne, it affects your self-confidence. It's a very difficult time. And even as a teenager, I wanted to know what was going on. Why did my skin suddenly just flare up, and why did I get acne? So I started kind of becoming very interested in hormones, even at that young age. And I started looking into ways that I could improve my skin in more of a holistic way rather than, just taking medications.
Yeah.
And which really helped. I really saw a difference when I really took control of my lifestyle and what I was eating, etc. So that triggered me really to become very interested in hormones and very interested in skin initially. So I trained to be an esthetician. Esthetician is a beauty therapist. Which, really focusing on the skin and focusing on hormonal skin issues, because a lot of women, when they come into perimenopause and menopause, they can all of a sudden start seeing quite drastic changes in their skin. You can develop acne, you can develop adult acne, sensitivities, dry skin, the list goes on. So I focused on hormonal skin problems when I was working as an esthetician, but I very soon came to realise that you can't just work from the outside, you also have to have that inside piece. So that's when I went back and went back to university and studied nutritional science, really, to really understand what happens in the body with food and how you can correct certain conditions, which is fascinating, and really focusing on hormones, because also, as I was growing up, I saw my mother and all the women, in my close family network, when they were going through menopause, which I didn't really at the time kind of understand what menopause was. But when they came to middle age, 45, they really started suffering and, having hot flushes, weight gain, the list goes on of menopausal symptoms. And no one would talk about it and no one got any help. So I really kind of made it my mission to talk about menopause and really help women and support women that are going through this phase in their life, because it can be really difficult. Some women just glide through, don't really have any problems, and some women really, really suffer. And there's so much that you can do with nutrition, lifestyle, and mindset to really help you feel better. So ever since then, I work as a nutritional therapist. I have my own nutritional therapy clinic. And I work with women worldwide, supporting them through this time in their lives.
And talking to a male, right? And I've said to you before, I've had to have some form of extension knowledge, but I'm just going to erase that, and I'm going to ask the question that if there's guys listening to this might want to know. Talk me through the stages of the menopause, because I don't think many people are aware of this. I think for someone who might be quite naive, they just see it as, right, it's the end of any menstrual cycle, and that's kind of it. And I think some guys, particularly, or even women who don't really know about it, they've got it to come. What is the real stages of the process there?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you absolutely can't take it for granted that everyone understands this. And it always amazes me how many women don't truly understand what menopause is. And it's not their fault. It's because we don't really talk about it. It's just kind of, oh, okay, I'm 45, or it's very varied what age you actually go into perimenopause, but it's not something we talk about enough. And okay, so the stages are, on average, it's very difficult to say exactly, but on average, women go into perimenopause roughly around the age of 45, but it can be early, it can be later. And what perimenopause is kind of like the first stage. It's where things start to become a little bit unbalanced. It's where, hormone levels, it's a bit like a roller coaster. Your estrogen, your progesterone can be all over the place. And this can trigger off, the classic menopausal symptoms like the hot flashes, mood swings, brain fog, itchy skin, weight gain. The list goes on. There's over 40 different menopausal symptoms. But because of the fluctuation in hormones in perimenopause, this can really make you feel terrible. And a lot of women suffer from estrogen dominance in perimenopause, which not many people think of. But estrogen levels can be very high and progesterone can be very low, and this can really make you feel like irritable and moody. And in one minute you can be hysterically happy, and the next minute you can be sat in the corner crying. So hormones have such an impact on how we are. But in perimenopause, you're still having periods, so you're still fertile, but it's just this stage where things are starting to become imbalanced, and estrogen and progesterone levels are starting to decline. It can go on for 5-6 years. That on average, women go into what we call menopause at the age of 51, but again, it's very varied. And what menopause means, it's basically when you don't have menstruation anymore. I mean, the word menopause, meno is menstruation, and pause is the stopping of. So you no longer ovulate. You're not having a menstruation. You're not having a period every month. And then all the time after that is what we call postmenopause. So when you think of the word menopause, it really actually only is like one day, because it's just that time from a year when you haven't had a period, you're then in menopause. And then all the time after that, you're in postmenopause. And postmenopause, we're living much longer now. So postmenopause can be up to 30 plus years. And this is a time in a woman's life where you should be having fun and really enjoying the next phase in your life. You maybe have more freedom. You haven't got children at home. You may be retired, so you've got more time. So it really is an important time in a woman's life that you should be feeling great and not just suffering from all these menopausal symptoms. So because when you're in postmenopause, you're obviously not ovulating. Your body produces a very small amount of estrogen and progesterone from your adrenal glands, which sit on top of your kidney. But, you're not producing the amount of those hormones that you did when you were younger. And this is where, the symptoms come in, and the health risks that really are attached to not producing those hormones, because we need estrogen and we need progesterone. They're very important for many different functions in the body.
I tend to find, you mentioned before about like no one's talking about it, no one knows. I find it strange that for something that everyone goes through from a woman's perspective, that's so, it's as almost guaranteed as going into tomorrow. It's going to happen. Obviously, there are certain cases where that might not be the case, but there's something that happens to almost virtually every woman. Why is it so taboo to talk about it? Why is that information not so widely known? And obviously, you know about it, and I have some knowledge about it myself. But why is it not general knowledge? Why are people so shocked about this sort of thing? And I know you can never truly be prepared as a woman for what's coming, no matter what information you have. And as you said before, it's relative. It affects different people. Some people can breeze through it, and some people have a really tough time. But why is it so taboo? Why do people just not? Why is it not talked about?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think that there's many reasons behind that, but I think one of the problems in society is that we live in a very ageism society, don't we?
Yeah.
Getting older is I'm not saying that this is correct, because I don't agree with it at all, but it's kind of looked down on. We all want to be young, don't we? We try to do everything that we possibly can to stay youthful. And when we think of, I think the way that menopause has been portrayed, it's been portrayed as something very negative. That the kind of, I'm not ovulating anymore, I can't have children anymore.
Yeah.
If you think of the stereotype of how we think, if you ask someone stereotype of a menopausal woman, then a lot of people would say, well, an older lady that's like crazy and is irritable and shouting at everybody and suffers from like constant hot flashes. So there's that stereotype also that we really have to remove and get rid of, that it shouldn't be like that. And I think that especially in the UK, there is a bit of a menopause revolution going on at the moment. A lot of people are really talking about the menopause, and celebrities have got behind it, haven't they? And it's really coming out into the public domain. So it is being spoken about a lot more, but it still needs to be spoken about even more. And it's that negativity attached to it. It's kind of more of, a woman getting older, not ovulating anymore, maybe losing her femininity. It's all these things that have been attached to it that are totally wrong. So it's really changing the narrative behind it and making it in more of a positive experience.
I guess it's quite an age-old thing where I can almost, I mean, it's wrong, but I can almost see it from a society point. Obviously, centuries ago, where it'd be kind of like, oh well, what good is a woman for her purpose now if she can't do that? Obviously, because back then that's how it was. It was women only served one job, and that's to have children. So if they can't do that anymore, and it's sad, but looking back on history, whether it was right or wrong, I can kind of see how that has created this taboo. Whether it's now we're in 2023, and life should be very, very different, and we should break out of that stereotype, and hopefully that is happening, because I've got a teenage daughter, who's going through her, she's now into that part of her life. She's a long way away yet from hitting that part, but I've had to educate myself on women hormones and stuff, and I'd like to think that the younger generation of just a younger generation, including boys as well, that in 10, 20 years from now, Alison, it will be a lot more openly talked about, and those stereotypes will drop a little bit from what it probably was, in the last 30 years.
Yeah, I think that's so true, Callum, and I think that will happen because the momentum is there's a lot of momentum behind this now, and women are really talking more about it, and they're not, they want the support. They're not satisfied with just being fobbed off and saying, "Oh, just get on with it," or "There's nothing wrong with you." There's a lot of momentum. So I think, like you say, in the younger generation will have more information, and it will be a lot easier for them. It won't be, shrouded in this negativity. One thing that I think is fascinating, this is actually come through research, is that, in societies or cultures where older women that have gone through menopause are looked up to. So that, they're more, they run the village. They're thought of as being, the elders, very knowledgeable. They don't really suffer from menopausal symptoms in the same way that women do in the Western world. And okay, there might be many factors coming into play there, but there's definitely one of those. There's a piece in there that to do with the fact that it's surrounded by positivity for them. They're thought of as being, these wonderful women that are so knowledgeable, and it's rejoiced in a way, not kind of brushed under the carpet and looked down on. So it's really interesting how they don't experience the symptoms the way that women do in the Western world.
Which makes sense, because it kind of the same sort of wisdom. It's like, well, this person's already been through that. She's lived a life. She's been through all these symptoms. She's now come over the other side. So it's interesting that society on that side is like, that makes you a strong, independent woman and with loads of wisdom. But then in some cultures, it's more of like, oh, you're crazy, or it's fascinating to me, because obviously I'll never experience it, right? But that doesn't mean that I don't respect it. And I was grown up with it. I was brought up by a single mum. I now live in a house full of women, apart from my dog. So I'm forced to pay attention and respect this stuff. And of course, I primarily work with women in the fitness realm. So I make it my business. And what I've come to learn, Alison, particularly the last, I would say, 3 years, where I've really kind of gone out from just the general fitness and nutrition stuff, and I've kind of gone deep into loads of things related to women hormones, prenatal, postnatal, and then more recently, in the last couple of years, I've gone into the perimenopause, postmenopause, all the stuff you just mentioned. I'm blown away, but I'm blown away by the amount of things that women have got to go through, and that's said with respect as well. That's not like in any kind of negative way. It kind of makes me feel like, I've studied the endocrine system in quite some depth, so both men and women have individual glands producing different hormones that can cause problems in either way. With the guys, it tends to be testicular, and with women, obviously, it's to do with the ovaries. However, hormones or not, there is no way that guys don't get an easy ride in this life. When I've learned some of the stuff that I've had to learn, that the women have to go through at that stage of their life. And as I said to you before we started this show, my mother's going through it early, and do you know what? She was just happy to stop. She used to have very bad periods, and I've never known someone to go, thank God, thank God I've already gone into my menopause. So that's another way of looking at it. But I guess some people, like you say, some people respond to it differently. Tell me, Alison, about midlife menopause, and touching a little bit about on the mindset for that.
Yeah, mindset is it's crucial, really. And I totally appreciate it's not easy. It's not as easy as just saying, well, have a positive mindset and you'll be fine. Because when you're feeling terrible, it's not easy, is it, to just kind of suddenly think everything is great. But it's very important to not be kind of sucked down that like negative route, because as human beings, we actually like complaining. If you think, we do complain more than we really should. And research has shown that if you can be more positive, and this has been shown in menopausal symptoms as well, is if you try to embrace this phase and not be so negative and doom and gloom, that you actually experience less menopausal symptoms. So that, because when you're positive, you release different hormones. When you smile, when you're happy, you release different hormones in the body, which make you feel better. If you're constantly negative, that actually causes stress in the body. And, the stress response, cortisol, which is a stress hormone, that when we have an increase in those hormones, it can actually make menopausal symptoms worse. So really trying to think that this is a phase that I'm going through, and it's a phase that every single woman in the whole world will go through. So it's nothing that you can avoid. It is something that is part of life. And it's just really accepting that and not trying to fight against it the whole time, and maybe thinking, okay, I'm in menopause, I'm in perimenopause, I'm just going to look after myself with more of a holistic approach to feel as good as I can. I tend to say to people when I work with my clients that, when you're younger, you can get away. I say, if you do like 80% of the time, if you look after yourself and do everything as far as nutrition and lifestyle correctly, you can have that 20% where you kind of, do what you want. But when it comes to menopause, it goes down to like 90-10, because you really feel that you can't behave the way you did when you were younger, because you would just feel terrible. Alcohol is a very good example of that, because majority of my clients, and I mean, I'm in perimenopause myself, and we all like the odd glass of wine. I just cannot drink wine anymore. It's just not worth it, because it keeps me awake, it makes me feel terrible, and even just like a glass or a couple of glasses. So most women avoid or cut down quite considerably on alcohol, and there's a reason behind that. Your body can't metabolize it like it used to. So there's certain tweaks and things that you really need to do to feel your best during this time.
I'll say, even from my perspective, I'll say, I get put off drinking now because I need to have a day off after a hangover to get over a hangover. And people, my clients at my gym that are older than me, will say, "Oh no, you don't be daft," And I'm like, "No, there is actually a biological reason for that. That's not just getting older. That is because, as you just say about metabolizing, like as you get older, your body can't break down your liver specifically as well, even from organs. If we're talking from a physiological and anatomical standpoint, your liver struggles, and then when your hormones come in, like you literally can't drink the same way you could in your 20s. It's not just a cliche. That is fact. It's like your body literally goes through those changes. As soon as you mentioned that, I literally nodded away, because alcohol was the first thing to come to my mind. And I guess we just have to embrace those changes. It's like you said before, about sort of this idea of getting older, and when you talked about how people perceive age, on one side you've got people who've gone through the menopause, the post-menopause, and they're kind of treated as this, queen of the village. Oh, she's been through it. And then in some sides, it's completely look at the opposite. And I think it's how we look at not just hormones, but how we look at age in general, and how society sees age, and how you should act at a certain age, or how you should be treated at a certain age. I mean, we'll open up a whole Pandora's box here of different things, but I guess it kind of falls into that same thing with hormones, doesn't it?
Yeah, Totally. And I think with age, don't regret or don't have issues about aging. I mean, aging is a privilege that is denied to many people, isn't it? I mean, if you've managed to live your life and you're living and you're enjoying life as you get older, that's a privilege. We don't all make it to old age, do we, for whatever reasons? But it's something that we should celebrate.
Sorry, it's just a little delay. No, absolutely, should be celebrated. Even when, I mean, you're probably going to roll your eyes here, but I'm 32, right? But I was more than ready for 30. I got to the truth. When I wasn't depressed. I was fine with it. But I know some people, particularly if they're shifting into the next decade of their life, that being 30, 40, 50, and 60 and above, it's there's again, I think it's about society of what's expected. So people dread being in the 30s. I mean, they're probably not wrong. You'll certainly. I've looked at two different ways. I saw a post which was that your 30s is just your 20s with money, a bit of stability and money. But then so many people in my age, or even people I know now that are coming into the 30s, and my mum took becoming 30. I mean, she was a young mum. She was only 16 when she had me. So there's only 16 years age between us. But I remember when she was first turning 30, she was really bad. She was not handling it well at all. And I think that's a bit kind of like what we were talking about. That society has created that fear. Oh, that's it, your 30s now. That's it, your days are done. It's time to get life insurance, get a mortgage, do all the, have kids. And it's like, there's a lot of pressure, isn't there, from society that when you are in a certain age bracket, there should be certain things you've achieved or certain things you should be doing or no longer doing. You're in your 40s, you shouldn't be going out anymore. You shouldn't be what you're going traveling in your 40s for. You should have a mortgage and a stable life. So I think that contributes. And what I tend to find, Alison, is we know that the endocrine system is the mothership, and I tend to feel that one thing we know from studying hormones is that environment can really play a part in how our hormones work. So, do you think that it's good that we're having that change? Because if we still stay in that mindset of that society environment, that can actually have an impact on our hormones and how our body sort of responds.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because it is ageism, and it's a difficult thing to. I think maybe it'll take a long time for us to change that mindset of ageism. And really, if you think about it, age is irrelevant. It's just living a healthy, happy life, whether you're 30 or you're 60. If you can be healthy and do the things that you want to do, then that's all that matters. But the environment, I think that it's important that you brought that up, and the effect that the environment has on our hormones is crucial, and especially women going into menopause, because our hormones are already unbalanced, and environmental toxins that we have, unfortunately, in our society, in today's society, have a real effect on the endocrine system. I mean, one in particular is plastics. We've now know that BPA, which is a chemical in plastics, has a detrimental effect on our bodies, on our hormones, and that is found in plastics everywhere, isn't it? But when we look at nutrition, I always try to say to my clients, avoid, if possible. I appreciate you can't overhaul your whole house to, just get rid of all the toxins, but, something as simple as not storing food in plastic containers, not using cling film. Because what happens is those molecules in the plastic seep into the food. And then what happens? I mean, we eat that food, and plastic has an effect. It's an endocrine disruptor. amongst other things, even like cleaning products in the house, all the products that we apply to our skin, and pesticides in the garden. The list goes on of endocrine disruptors. But I think it's important that people are aware of that and just try to reduce what you can. Of course, it's impossible to reduce everything, but just small things within your home environment can really help your toxic load.
And where does, so as far as the switching over from hormones a little bit, because I know it's a big minefield to a lot of people that are listening. When we start mentioning words like endocrine system, a lot of people don't even know what that is, which is ironic because it is one of the major systems within the body, probably more so than the nervous system. But one is switch us over to nutrition a little bit, because obviously we've talked a bit about sort of the menopause, and we've talked about your background in sort of healthcare and particularly skincare. Where did I know you probably were always using nutrition and stuff, but where did that switch happen for you? Like, what was it about nutrition that made you go, oh, hang on a minute, this is interesting. This is something that I really want to specifically delve into.
Yeah, it happened. I know exactly. I can answer that question immediately because it happened to me when I was working with clients that had skin problems. So, they had acne, for example, or they had suddenly developed very sensitive skin, or eczema, or psoriasis, or some sort of skin irritation. And I remember with a couple of clients of mine, we started talking about nutrition. I mean, I wasn't qualified as a nutritional therapist then, but even when you train as a beauty therapist, you do get some nutritional training. So I was intrigued why this was happening. And long story short, I remember there was one client that had quite bad acne, and we started talking about nutrition. And she actually went to see a nutritional therapist as well as coming to see me. And I hadn't seen her, I think it was 6 weeks. So we had an appointment, and she'd been off and doing her thing and been to see a nutritional therapist. And she came back to me 6 weeks later, and she was like a different person. And her skin was so much better. It was like 100% better. She's had a few blemishes left, but the actual inflammation in her skin had been corrected. And this was down to the fact that she'd been seeing a nutritional therapist. They'd done some nutritional testing, and they'd found out that she had a gluten sensitivity. She was lactose intolerant. And, she maybe didn't have the healthiest of diets. She was eating a lot of processed, refined foods. So they'd, given her the advice, and she'd really taken it on board and started eating it in a way that suited her. And that had improved her skin. And that's really and I'd seen that in a few clients as well, but that's really when I started to think, okay, this nutrition piece, this lifestyle piece is huge when it comes to our overall health. It's so important that we eat in a way. It's very individual. Yeah. We're all very different. There's not one size fits all, but you can correct so many things with nutrition. I work with a functional medicine model where you look at the whole person, and it's like peeling back the layers of an onion. So you really get to the root cause. You're not just working with the symptom. You're finding out, why do I have that? If it's migraines, or it's bloating, or whatever it is, there's always something behind that. And it's fascinating you can do something called a timeline, where you actually look back in someone's life, because a lot of the time trauma, medication, surgeries, all these things that have happened to us in our life have a huge effect on our health, and it sometimes doesn't show up until years later. So it's really fascinating working in that way, because you can really get to the root cause and really help people feel better.
Absolutely. Obviously we were scheduled to record this podcast a week ago. And as I explained to you, I've recently been having some neurological problems, which I've mentioned on this podcast before, because it had been happening for a year. started when I had COVID. Books started opening my mind to a little bit of things like you just said, looking back through trauma, and I've had to really assess some things. I mean, I'm a fitness professional, but I'm still looking into my diet and stuff, and it does make you. And we've talked about the endocrine system and leaving sort of trauma, leaving patterns, even down to the things that you mentioned, like plastics, sort of seeping into the bloodstream and stuff. And currently, there's still no idea of what caused this, what it is fully, or what the triggers might be. But it's allowed me to start going a bit more of a holistic route and going, okay, well, you know, what could, and I think this mainly came down to the fact that the NHS, as I'm sure you're still aware, is a flawed system, and you're waiting a long time to be given. And then you mentioned before about medication. Well, medication is basically just hormones. So what that's going to do is stop something. And as you know, the hormones, when one's imbalanced, another hormone has to come around to try and balance that all back on again. So whilst I'm waiting for the inevitable pharmaceuticals, it's allowed me to start going, okay, well, what can I do in the meantime? And more so, lifestyle choices, and particularly nutrition. And one thing that's interesting, we're talking about skincare, Alison, is I have eczema. Had eczema. And the reason why I use it is now past tense, is I had it as a baby. And I stopped eating red meat. And now I initially did this for ethical reasons, right? Rather than anything health-wise. But my family wanted to do it, and what I noticed almost instantly, as soon as I stopped eating red meat, because I became pescatarian, eating fish, and I still was a polar pescatarian, my eczema had cleared up like that almost within a week, and my asthma, because it's atopic asthma, hay fever, you know the ones, gone, literally overnight gone, and it's my now. Then I would say back in probably lockdown, I started slipping it back into my diet again because I was trying to boost testosterone levels because I was trying for a baby. And again, red meat would help do that. And I started to notice things coming back again, and with the combination of lockdown and stuff like that. So I've had my own experience, a bit like yourself when you discovered it, where my own skin condition, my own atopic conditions had suddenly stopped. And before then, I was on steroid creams, and obviously I still have my salbutamol inhaler. So it's funny, isn't it? I think that the world is switching on a little bit now to what we eat really impacts us. Like it's the old saying, isn't it? You are what you eat. Like what, and people just see food and they don't see it the same way we might see it. But before then, I'd see food as energy, right? Calories. That's it. But now I'm starting to look at what's in the food and thinking, that's going into my body. My body has to respond to that. So if we're just constantly pumping junk food and stuff, like you said, stuff that's been coming plastic containers, and we're just constantly pumping that into our body, it's no wonder why people are having these health issues, because our body's literally going, well, if that's what you're going to give me, then this is how I'm going to respond.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting what you were saying when you stop, because there's so many different. Everyone has different triggers as well. You know, obviously, red meat for you was one of the reasons behind your skin and asthma. So no, it's fascinating. It's fascinating the power of nutrition, and I mean, I can really get on my high horse about the food environment that we live in, and you know, all the processed, the ultra processed, refined foods that are everywhere, and they are detrimental to health. They're not. Most of them are void of nutrition to start with, and you know, they contain high amounts of sugar, damaged fats, you know, no nutritional value. Yet that is predominantly. I think I read the other week that in the UK, 60% of people's diet is ultra processed foods. But it's hard to. I'm not like. I understand that it's not easy to get away from that because it's everywhere. Everywhere you go, there is food, isn't there? And the majority of food that we have in our supermarkets, wherever you go, is this ultra processed food? And I mean, it's a huge question. You could do like hours on this, but why are we doing that? There's so much money behind that, isn't it? It's like all the big food companies. You know, we all know it's not rocket science. We all really know that these foods aren't so nutritious for us, but we carry on eating them because they're also very addictive.
And again, we're talking about sort of hormones that a lot of people come to me and they'll say, "Oh, I've got a sweet tooth. You know, it's my sugar cravings. I'm addicted." And I tend to say to them, "You do realise that sugar's a carbohydrate, and carbohydrate is energy. So you're telling me you're addicted to energy." And people kind of go, I'm like, "Listen, I'm not saying sugar's bad for you. But I'm also not saying that sugar is itself is what is causing addiction. What you are addicted to, again, talking about the endocrine system, is those feel-good chemicals. When you eat these nice foods, particularly serotonin, dopamine, they are addictive, and your brain loves that. So for me personally, I've always said, I'm addicted to pizza. Like my two weaknesses, Alison, is pizza and Oreos. All right, and do you know what? I'm obviously not addicted to them. But don't get me wrong. Yes, there are certain ingredients that are very moreish and of course, fats and the things that are added to foods, sugars, fats, and salts usually are those three things that, we do crave more of. But what I'm really addicted to, and I say this to people all the time, you don't see people walking downtown, not usually, with a big massive bar of dairy milk just eating, like a true addict. In the same way that I say you don't see people robbing a bank to get robbing a grocery store to get their fix of pineapple. We're conveniently addicted to the stuff that's unhealthy for us. And whilst I agree there is obviously some additives and stuff put in there to keep that, the truth is, in my research, is that what we really want is those feel good. What do I really want? I want to pick, I talked about environment before, Alison, which is I feel like I wouldn't just go and order a pizza and sit downtown and eat it. That wouldn't feel right to me. I don't crave that. What do I crave? I crave putting Netflix on, sitting in my house, curtains closed, getting comfy on my sofa. And that association with that pizza, suddenly now all these things are, that's what I'm craving. I'm not eating Oreos when I'm out on a night out. I'm eating Oreos when I'm in bed at home, catching up with my TV. So, do you think that, although obviously the companies are adding that, do you think that that's something that we can work on ourselves? Obviously, we know that the food industry is not going to change anytime soon. In fact, it's probably going to get worse just because of the trade and cost of living and stuff like that. But do you think we can work on that by changing our diet and start looking at you mentioned plastic before, and to be honest, that's something I'm quite naive about, because you're right. I think, oh my god, it's plastic's everywhere, and there is chemicals in plastic that do seep into your body, and that's a fact. But I'm like, oh my god, even down to the packaging that I'm buying my fruit in, it's like it's absolutely everywhere. So do you believe that if we seriously put our mind to it and we start not just assessing the food we eat, but the environment of which we would normally crave those foods, do you think we can get out of that and we can start to make some healthy changes?
Yeah, it's all about habits, isn't it? And it is totally what you were saying. It's that you have to have all those pieces together. Why do you at night, when you've just eaten a great meal and you're totally satisfied, you then suddenly start thinking, I'd love some chocolate when I go and watch something on Netflix or what. You don't actually need chocolate. It's that whole kind of hormonal cascade that goes on for, like you say, the serotonin, the dopamine release. It's difficult because it's habit changing. But what I find that when I work with clients is to ask them to be really mindful. And for example, we just take chocolate as an example, when you've already eaten and you're certainly not hungry, but you just fancy that chocolate when you're watching telly, is really like, go back and think about like what you were doing exactly at that time when you got that craving to eat chocolate. Like, where were you? And is it the same procedure that you do every evening? Because it's quite interesting when people, I tell my clients to write down like your movements when you've had your dinner, write down exactly what you do. And majority of the time it's the same that they do. They maybe like turn the television on and then they'll walk to the cupboard that's got the chocolate in it. So just doing something as simple as saying, okay, well, don't put the television on. Do something else before you put the television on. So maybe like just go outside or, sit down in another room or have a conversation with somebody. And just making those small adjustments can affect your behaviour. So you don't do the same behaviours. You really got to like break a pattern. And like I say, it's not easy, but it's breaking that pattern so you don't do the same behaviours, because that dopamine feeling is really difficult. It's addictive. We want that reward feeling. We want that chocolate. But you can correct it, but you have to be very mindful. You have to really think about, okay, I'm craving chocolate now. Why am I craving chocolate? I've just eaten a big meal. I certainly don't need anything else to eat. I'm going to go and do something else instead.
Yeah, I think it's distractions. Like you say, it's just a chain of events. Like each action triggers a habit to crave the next action. And I think if we're creatures of habit, and like you said, we're in the same routine, it's no wonder that our brain is like, okay, well, that comes next, and then that comes next. And it's the same as in the morning. The first thing I'm doing subconsciously, I'm not even thinking about it, is I'm reaching for that kettle. The very first thing I'm having is that coffee. I will do nothing else. That is where I'm going. I'm going down to that kitchen, which is why I tell a lot of my clients, if you want to get into a healthy habit, and we're kind of digressing from nutrition here a little bit, but let's say you're trying to get into a habit of taking supplements in the morning, or having a protein shake in the morning, or even doing a stretch, associate it with a habit that you already know is non-negotiable to you. So if you know most people might have their morning coffee, and I want to start doing something like stretching, or for example, I'm just trying to get back into creatine, right? I'm trying to have my creatine every day. But I'm a sucker for it. I just forget to do it, right? So one thing that I've started doing is I've left my my protein, my shaker, with it already, the powder already in at the bottom, and I've placed it right next to my coffee machine, so that when I go downstairs to do what I'm normally going to do anyway, I've got So I guess it's just like you just said. You can fix these things. You can change it, but it starts with being mindful and writing things down. I'm a big fan of journaling, and one thing I've done recently is learn a lot about myself from journaling. Going, bloody hell! You said earlier in the show we moan a lot, and I'm like, oh my god. I moan an unhealthy amount, but I would never have picked up on that had I have not. Success leaves clues, or what gets measured gets managed. I feel like if people just stopped and monitored why we do the things that we do, or why we respond the way we do, that's when we can start to fix and change our habits, and start taking it in the right place. And Alison, and obviously we've established here that nutrition plays a massive part in our lifestyle and our hormones. I want to switch this back to the menopause a little bit then, and go, okay, so how then is the best way to utilize your nutritional habits to help with dealing with the menopause?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to nutrition and menopause, you really, going back to the ultra processed foods, have been shown if you have a diet high in sugar, it triggers off menopausal symptoms. So really you really want to eat whole foods. A Mediterranean style diet always comes out in all research as being a very good style of eating. And it's not complicated. It's basically, fish, vegetables, legumes, fruits.
It's fish and veg, isn't
It's
it?
whole
Really?
food. Yeah, nuts, seeds. You're not eating these processed foods, and that's a realistic, healthy way of eating. If you see a package and it's got 20, 30 different ingredients on it, and you can't pronounce half of them, then really you shouldn't be eating that. You just want to go back to basics and eat real food. That's one thing. What you need to think about is, bone health. As women go into menopause due to the decline in estrogen, which is needed for bone health, we need to think about, eating things that are rich in calcium, in vitamin D, like all your green leafy vegetables, dairy products, etc. So that's one thing. And then blood sugar balance. Again, estrogen has so many different effects on the body, and when we don't have those estrogen levels, we're more at risk of things like osteoporosis, cardiovascular events. So really managing blood sugar by not eating refined, really sugary foods that shoot your blood sugar up, eating more, whole foods like your brown rice, your brown pastas, your vegetables, fruits, that have a slower release, that don't affect your blood sugar in that way. And then also healthy fats. And a lot of people feel uncomfortable around fat. They think, oh no, I know that the generation that I grew up in, fat was a swear word. Everything was low fat. But now we've started to realise that actually isn't correct. It's down to what sort of fat we should be eating healthy fats with every meal, like avocados, olive oil, nuts and seeds, butter. There's nothing wrong with butter in moderation, but we need fat for every cell in the body needs fat.
Notoriously an anti-slimming world. That's what a lot of people know me for, because in my opinion, what they do is put some points on fats, because fats contain more calories per gram than carbs and protein. We know that, but the general people aren't aware. They just see it as, well, how do I get these people into a calorie deficit? I'll give them rules. I'll put a sin system, and I'll get them to just avoid avocados, but they can eat as much pasta as they want. And we won't get into a rant about diet companies, but I just wanted to add on to what you said there about the fats. It's what carbs was. They constantly change between which is the demon word, which is worse for us, carbs or fats. I'm like, the macronutrients, our body needs them. But I don't know how you feel about this, Alison, because I've not really done much research into this, but I have noticed, well, you mentioned osteoporosis, and it probably is obviously tied in with hormones as well, because it has come from a generation that may be menopausal, postmenopausal. But one thing I've noticed is I've had clients come into my gym, and they are over 45, over 50, and they have early either rheumatoid arthritis or even osteoporosis, and their joints are so bad. And I can guarantee you, if I ask them, most of them have been following these low-fat diets for decades. And I've seen a link between people who've done Slimming World, Cambridge, Weight Watchers, stuff like that, which are very notoriously low-fat diets. And because they're not getting, because you just said that they see fats and they think, oh, fats is bad, saturated fat is bad. And what they don't realise, no, trans saturated fat is bad, but a lot of them don't know what that is. So because these diet companies are telling people to avoid all fats, they're not getting the omegas, they're not getting the fatty acids, they're not getting a lot of the calcium that you mentioned from the dairy and stuff. Do you find that not just from a hormone standpoint, but actually from direct avoiding certain fats and macronutrients, that is also speeding up that aging process and giving people conditions that they have no place having in their 40s and 50s?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down, especially when it's like joint health and, like you were saying, aches and pains and arthritis. Omega-3, for example, that's shown in research to have huge anti-inflammatory effects on the body. We need that and all those other wonderful healthy fats for every cell in the body. And if you're eating a lot of these like damaged fats, if for want of a better word, or trans fats, hydrogenated fats, they cause inflammation in the body. And inflammation, it can show up in many different ways in people. And one of them can be, as joint pain, stiffness, the aches and pains, backache. So absolutely, I think everything in moderation. As a nutritional therapist, everything I say is evidence-based, because there's so much misinformation out there. There is nothing wrong in eating healthy fats, which I'm sure there's many people, everyone is entitled to their own point of view, but we need healthy fats. So cutting fat completely out of your diet is not something that I would recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, well, I mean, that just comes down to, we're digressing a bit, I guess, from the point, but I guess that comes down to a lot of the companies, they want to sell a product, right? A product or a plan. And it's very easy to pull people away from the evidence-based nutrition to sway them into these other ways. Oh, well, if you want to lose weight, you need to go keto. If you want to lose weight, you need to, and it's definitely big over in the States than I tend to find in Europe. But obviously referring back to sort of this thing that I'm going through, I was reaching out to some people, and I had a couple of people, Americans, who would reach out to me, go, oh, do you know what really helps with that? Keto. I was doing a keto diet, and it massively helped with my seizures and stuff. And I'm thinking, you do know the brain loves carbohydrates. I'm like, oh no. But I guess it's people are just looking for answers, aren't they? They're just, people like this idea of, if I just remove something from my diet, that'll fix the problem. When in actual fact, like you just said, people don't want to accept that a balanced, healthy, balanced approach is just the way forward. Get your fats, have your carbs, have some sugar, but small amounts of sugar, and try not to make it refined sugar. Try and get those, like you said before, brown pasta. Try and swap things, brown rice, sorry, not pasta, but try and swap things over to those slower, those things that release insulin a lot slower, and the bodies can manage it a little bit, rather than just piling in all this junk food that is causing our body to have this cocktail of like, whoa, what's going on? And when you do this repeatedly, that's what's happening to our bodies, and that's why coronary heart disease, that's why obesity, that's why all these things are so high and putting stress on the NHS at the moment, because of our choices. And I guess to sum up sort of my point on this is that all of this can be changed by changing our diet and just making smaller, healthier changes.
It's lifestyle medicine, isn't it? I mean, half of the time that people that are, suffering from chronic diseases, if they sat down with their doctor or health professional, before it actually got to that level where they become ill, and had a discussion about lifestyle medicine, then half of them wouldn't need to take medications, and and this again has been proven. So yeah, it's a big discussion, really, isn't it? When you're looking at things like that, but there is so much that can be done with nutrition and with lifestyle, and of course you have to want to do it. It takes a bit of effort from the person's side to implement that, but it's worth it because you just feel so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Alison, great stuff today. Thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge bombs with us today. Where can people go and find you if you want to go and check you out a little bit more? Where can they find you on social media or websites, stuff like that? How can, if people are listening to this and thinking, yes, I want to know a bit more, where can they go and find you?
Oh, thank you, Carl. It's been lovely, really wonderful conversation with you. Thank you. Yeah, the best place to find me really is on my website, which is alisonbladh.com. That's BLADH. There you can find all my links to all my social media platforms. I'm on virtually all social media. If you just look for Alison Bladh, I'm there. Also on my website, there's a resources page. So if anyone wants any ideas of, recipes or if we say, you're suffering from hot flashes and you want some ideas of what you should be eating, what you shouldn't be eating, there's lots of free downloads there. So if any of your listeners are interested, please feel free to go and download anything you want there.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. And I will be posting the link to the website, more specifically to that resources page, in the show notes of the episode. So if you're listening to this, you can go and click on that and go and check that out right now. Alison, thank you very much for coming on today. Great conversation. So, always get carried away when I talk to anyone who works in the nutrition field, because I'm so passionate about it, and we could have easily gone on a lot longer, but I know you're a busy woman and we've got stuff to do, so I had to sort of cut it there. But before we went on any more of a tangent, but it's just that's nutrition, isn't it? I mean, it does shape our life and our world, but yet it's so overlooked that so much of society, so many health problems, and that, including the menopause and hormones, it all comes down to a lot of it's what we're putting in our body. it's our diet.
Yeah, totally. Just nutrition, and like you say, it's something you could go on for hours. I mean, it's a never-ending topic. Nutrition, it's fascinating, and I'm just as passionate about it as you are. So it was lovely talking to you.
Absolutely. Lovely talking to you, Alison. Thank you very much, and I will, make sure people go give her a follow on Instagram or Facebook or all the social media handles. Go and check out her website. Alison, it's been great to have you on. Hope you have a enjoyable rest of your nice hot weather. Not that I'm jealous at all of your beautiful day where you are, because I've got clouds outside. But I'm glad you're not here in the UK enjoying, because I'm sure you've been in Europe and you've seen the difference between Europe, and then you've looked over at our little island and there's just a cake of cloud that's not shifted for an entire month. And it's ridiculous. Oh. I'm ready to get the pumpkins out, Alison. I'm ready. That's it now. Give me autumn. I'm here.
Thank you, Carla. It's lovely talking.
Okay, Alison. Thank you very much. Take care. All the best.